What's up, guys? This is John, and basically, I was watching a video. I think I still have it. Yeah, cool. Basically, shit. The video is where is it? Yes. Okay. So basically, shit. God damn it. Anyways, this is vt.physics. Okay. Now, I always call her out, basically in comments and whatnot, because a lot of what she says is stupid and pointless. And I will say this video that she has sharing is kind of stupid and pointless. And this is the kind of stuff that will plague your mind if you let her. Yes, it's captivating, but that's like basically climb up a tree and start throwing poop at one another, because that's the life you're asking for when you choose the education that she's giving you, right? That's the life of just taking things and not working to achieve anything. You're just gonna have the bare, the minimal fucking the necessities if you're lucky. Sorry. Anyways, so we'll watch this.
So sailors used to blame strange things on the Kraken, like, oh
Kraken.
no, the ship is gone. It must be that giant squid again. It turns out they may have been onto something when they described a gray wall rising out of the sea. That wall is what we now call a rogue wave. Normally, waves pass through each other harmlessly, but some
It's not called a rogue wave. They can be called a rogue wave. There isn't a wave that is, oh, that's a rogue wave. It's just that there are waves that you say, oh, that's a rogue wave. You know what I mean? Like, it's a small difference, but it's important for this to work properly in your head, right? You can be like the AI and the robot machines, and they're trying to, oh, look at me, I could do a flip, and anybody can program something and have it, perform those actions. That's cool. But when you make it autonomous, that when it starts to do things just to do it and not because you explicitly told it to, that's the difference. That's what AI is. It's intelligence, right? You lying about it isn't artificial. That's you lying about it. Maybe that's what artificial is, just lying about it. So, anyways, that's a thought I have to think about at some point one day. but right now is the point. The point is, this video, it's like this right here, led me off because I thought this was pretty cool. Watch.
sometimes their crest or the peaks of the wave line up exactly the same moment, so
I was like, whoa, I didn't know they did that.
their energies add together instead of canceling out.
That was pretty cool. But and yes, like thank you for pointing that out. But the point is that this is just a side effect. But your main topic is something irrelevant that I don't really care about. It's this side thing that I want to focus on, and that's the kind of what matters. And that's kind of what I'm trying to tell you. In the world, you need to point out things like this to kids because they will be, oh, the Kraken, oh yeah, pirates, oh, the fun stuff, and oh, Jack Sparrow and all this bullshit. Meanwhile, the government's being hijacked, and we're gonna be slaves pretty soon, because you're talking about Captain Jack Sparrow, and you don't know how a wave works. You know what I'm saying? As a concept, as an example, not literally this particular thing, but I'm just saying using this example she is talking about bullshit, but in reality, this should be the highlight. So, anyways.
That can create a single towering wave 2 or 3 times taller than anything around it. But even today, rogue waves are a bit of a mystery because scientists can describe how they happen, but can't predict when or where the next one will rise. So,
That's why they call them rogue waves, you fucking idiot. They can't tell what they are, so they call them rogue waves. You're splitting the 2 points as if the two are this happened, like that's what happened when they discovered it. And but the thing is, it's not a discovery. That's we know, right? But she talks about it like, hey, this is new, and no one knew about this, and it's like, but science knew. You're just catching up. Stop acting like the world's just starting. It's been known. We're ahead of this, basically. And the reason why is because people might have inclination to have a party or something. It's so stupid. Anyways, point is, she sucks as a teacher, okay? Now, what I wanted to show you was this. This guy is not a shitty teacher, okay? So listen and enjoy with me. I only watched up to like 6 minutes. I was like, you know what, this is pretty good. And I'm going to feature this on my channel because that's kind of what I do. Speaking of, let me go ahead and there we go. That's more better. That's more better. Okay. So, this is from khanacademy.org. As you can see, I know you can't see it, but constructive and instructive interference. And this is kind of what I saw in that video. And again, she was talking about some okay, cool, useless crap, whatever, Hollywood, Jack Sparrow, molesters and child pornography and human trafficking. This is the result of you not looking at what matters. What I'm trying to show you and explain to you and point to you. Yes, you can eat sugar all you want. You're going to become a fat piece of shit at the end of the journey. You don't want that, so stop eating the fucking sugar. The point is, like, this is what I'm trying to tell you, right? You want the apple because you want to stay healthy. And you want to live till you're 100. You don't want to die at 50, give a heart attack because you're a fat fuck. Anyways.
So imagine you've got a wave source. This could be a little oscillator that's creating a wave on a string, or a little paddle that goes up and down that creates waves on water, or a speaker that creates sound waves. It could be any wave source whatsoever, creates this wave, a nice simple harmonic wave. Now let's say you've got a second wave source. If we take this wave source, the second one, and we put it basically right on top of the first one, we're going to get wave interference, because wave interference happens when two waves overlap. And if we want to know what the total wave...
I will say, I don't know why it's called wave interference, because it's kind of wave in sync. Basically, they sync up. So calling it interference doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if this is a error by him or an error in the logic or the systems built that exist. I don't know if it's an error in their thinking, but they're more like in sync, basically. Maybe they had the wrong thinking at the time, and in sync is the correct choice because they add up. Why would destructive, constructive, or destructive, or why would interference add up, right? If it's interfering, that's negative, but adding up is positive in this instance, at least. So
wave's going to look like. We add up the contributions from each wave. So if I put a little backdrop in here and I add the contributions, if the equilibrium point is right here, so that's where the wave would be 0, The total wave can be found by adding up the contributions from each wave. So if we add up the contributions from wave 1 and wave 2, wave 1 here has a value of 1 unit, wave 2 has a value of 1 unit, 1 unit plus 1 unit is 2 units, and then 0 units and 0 units is still 0. -1 and -1 is -2, and you keep doing this and you realize, wait, you're just going to get a really big cosine looking wave, and it's going to drop down to here. And we say that these waves are constructively interfering. We call this constructive interference because the two waves combined to construct a wave that was twice as big as the original wave. So when two waves combine and form a wave bigger than they were before, we call it constructive interference. And
Again, interference. I don't know why.
because these two waves combined perfectly, sometimes you'll hear this as perfectly constructive
Or in sync. You know what I'm
or
saying?
totally constructive interference. You can imagine cases where they don't line up exactly correct, but
I can understand if they want to keep it simple, right? Like to keep the terms simple. We're talking about a thing, and now we're talking about a form of thing, right? Whereas a new word starts a new branch already. And so, in that sense, I get it for simplicity's sake. But life is complex, so I don't know. I don't agree with that, right? If that's the reasoning for simplicity, I don't agree with your reasoning. Is the point? But yes, and for the record, I bitch at people for interfering, but I'm talking about something that is on point. I didn't say, oh, his voice reminds me of Godzilla or something, changing the topic. I'm still on point. And that's the bigger picture. That's why everyone has ADD and no one can focus, and why they're robbing the government, and why we're going to be slaves if no one fucking steps up and be a man, right? As, what is his name? Russell Peters would say, be a man.
you still might get a bigger wave. In that case, it's still constructive. It might not be totally constructive. So that was constructive interference. And these waves were constructive. Think about it, because this wave source 2 looked exactly like wave source 1 did, and we just overlapped them, and we got double the wave, which is kind of like, all right, duh, that's not
They were in sync, yes, I know.
that impressive. But check this out. Let's say you had another wave source, a different wave source 2. This one is what we call pi shifted, because look at it. Instead of starting at a maximum, this one starts at a minimum compared to what wave source 1 is at. So it's 1/2 of a cycle ahead of or behind of wave source 1.
So the name, it's called pi and pi shifted. Why? Why isn't it just plus 1 wave and then minus 1 wave? Because for simplicity's sake, but you just added pi. That's a whole different. It had no reason to be there, but for some reason, there it is. You know what I'm saying?
Half of a cycle is pi because a whole cycle is 2 pi. That's why people often call this pi shifted or 180 degrees shifted. Either way, it's out.
Right, you're talking about the concept of a circle, right? But why make that circle analogy a pi analogy? Why not just consider it a circle? And then, yes, we're talking about a circle. Now you could go ahead and bring in the pi example, but you're complicating things. Remember what I said before? If you named it interference or whatever for simplicity, I understand. But now you're being complicated for no reason. So
Out of phase from wave source 1 by half of a cycle. So what happens if we overlap these two? Now I'm going to take these two. Let's get rid of that there. Let's just overlap these two and see what happens. I'm going to overlap these two waves, and we'll perform the same analysis. I don't really even need the backdrop now, because look at, if I've got 1 and -1, 1 and -1, 0. 0 and 0, 0. -1 and 1, 0. 0 and 0, 0. No matter where I'm at, a half, a -half, 0. These two waves are going to add up to 0. They add up to nothing. So we call this destructive interference, because these two waves essentially destroyed each other.
or interference, right? Before the waves were in sync, whereas this is just complete interference. It's completely blocked, 100% blocked. but you're complicating it with your terms, right?
This seems crazy. Two waves add up to nothing? How can that be the case? Are there any applications?
That's a good example of math going too far. Like you're extending your hand too far and you're overriding logic, and this is why a lot of people don't like math, because a lot of math goes against logic for just the sake of, and that's the only reasoning. Why are you doing it? Because we can, and that's it. Like I watched Neil deGrasse Tyson talking, and he's getting off on and splitting hairs and being complicated. Like, stop making things complicated. This should be, everyone should know about it. You know what I'm saying? Everyone should be able to just know this shit. And honestly, it's not that hard. It's you're making it hard, right? And when I was a kid, I didn't have this overview that I have now. And I wish I had it when I was younger, or I had an adult in my life that had that overview. But I didn't have it. Now I do, and now I'm putting it out there. So enjoy. Whoever's watching this, you're fucking lucky. I wish I had me growing up.
Of this? Well, yeah. So imagine you're sitting on an airplane and you're listening to the annoying roar of the airplane engine in your ear. It's very loud.
And one thing I will say too is he explains this like he's talking or he's teaching a kindergarten class. Like the kids have trouble understanding words, so he has to draw a picture of an ear as an example. Like, come on, dude. Like, move forward, please. You know what I'm saying? And that was my issue in school. And so instead of me slowing down, right, I should have been put in an honors class. But they tried to get me to slow down and say, oh, it's your ADD or oh, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, they just sucked as a institution of education, right? I should have been put into an honors class for being bored, like so bored that I'd rather make fart noises. Like that's what was going on, but instead they're like, "Oh, you're making fart noises, therefore it must be ADD." They didn't ask, "Why are you making fart noises?" Because then they would have found out, "Oh, he's bored, so let's give him harder shit to work on." Oh, he's actually focused now. What do you know?
It might be annoying. So what do? You put on your
1 second. That's actually a good point for the title. So I will forget. So I have to stop making a note. So ADD. Let's see. A good teacher. Complete ADD, and so continue.
noise canceling headphones, and what those noise canceling headphones do, they sit on your ear, they listen to the wave coming in. This is what they listen to, this sound wave coming in, and they cancel off that sound by sending in their own sound, but those headphones pi shift the sound that's going into your ear. So
Pi shift. And what you should say is it reverses it. Pi shift is just a complication for no reason, right? Complete educators make complex for no reason.
they match that roar of the engine's frequency, but they send in a sound that's pi shifted so that they
That's reversed.
cancel and your ear doesn't hear anything. Now, it's often not completely silent. They're not perfect, but they work.
Again, as a kid, I was like, pi shifted. Oh, I don't get it. But as an adult, I understand reversed He's just complicating because he's an asshole.
Surprisingly well. They're essentially fighting fire with fire. They're fighting sound with more sound.
See, he's like breaking it down as talking to like a fucking 2-year-old.
And they rely on this idea of destructive interference. They're not perfectly, totally destructive, but the way
And again, in school, I was like, I need to learn, but they weren't teaching me.
waves I've drawn here are totally destructive. If they were to perfectly cancel, we'd call that total destructive interference or perfectly destructive interference.
Right, that makes sense. It's completely interfered with, so yeah, it's just interference, right? Perfect should be 0, right? And then alternatives, that's when you start getting weird. But what you're doing is you're complicating normal. And what I mean is there's the sound, and then there's the opposite of the sound. And so that's nothing or 0. And so that should just be just clean, just done. But you're adding all of these things, basically, for nothing when it's. But you're talking about 0, right? So why are you adding all these other things into 0? It's just 1 or 0. It's not 1 or 0.5 by Jesse Jones Locker, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Don't complicate it.
And it happens because this wave we sent in was pi shifted compared to what the first wave was. So let me show you something interesting. If I get rid of all this, let me clean up this mess. If I've got wave source 1, let me get wave source 2 back. So this was the wave that was identical to wave source 1. We overlap them, we get constructive interference because the peaks are lining up perfectly with the peaks in these valleys.
He called wave source 2 for some reason. It should be just wave source 1 and a repeat of wave source 1. It would be more clarity, more clear, more concise. I really am I'm just a teacher. I mean, I'm a boss, dude. That's what I am. I am a boss. Like, this is what I should be doing for the rest of my life.
Or troughs are matching up perfectly with the other valleys or troughs. But as I move this wave,
what I do is just make your idea better. That's what I do.
Wave source 2 forward, look at what happens. They start getting out of phase. When they're perfectly lined up, we say they're in phase. They're starting to get out of phase, and look at when I move it forward enough, what was a constructive situation becomes destructive. Now all the peaks are lining up with the valleys. They would cancel each other out. And if I move it forward a little more, it lines up perfectly again, and you get constructive.
Yeah.
Move it more, I'm going to get destructive. Keep doing this, I go from constructive to destructive over and over. So in other words, one way to get
again, to a child, this is great, but come on, dude.
Constructive interference is to take two wave sources that start in phase and just put them right next to each other. And a way to get destructive is to take...
And this is why I was, like, my ADD is going nuts right now. It's because you suck as a teacher. Like, literally, like, this is boring to me. This is why I'm like, it's because this is not fun. This is stupid.
Two wave sources that are pi shifted out of phase and put them right next to each other, and that'll give you destructive because all the peaks match the valleys. But another way to get constructive or destructive...
To be honest, thinking about it, kids love learning. The problem is you suck as a teacher, and so if you're not connecting with the kid, it's because you failed as a teacher to connect. And yeah, there are sometimes some instances where the kid fucked up and he just doesn't want to be there. You know, that does happen, but acting like every kid doesn't want to be there, that's a good example of like the world I grew up in. Like, I had a brain surgery and I'm still not on disability. I had a stroke and I'm still not on disability. It's because they don't believe me. And yeah, I can't work, I can't do it. I'm smart and I'm intelligent and I'm the smartest man alive, but I can't use my right arm. I can barely use my right leg. What the fuck do you want me to do? Like, I don't have the the licenses that you need to do these jobs. I may be good at fucking the basics, fundamental shit, but there's no expert job that does that. Not yet. Give me some money to get started, and once I get started and I'm going, cut me off the money and start taking taxes. That's what you should do, but they fucked me over though my whole fucking life. Like, literally, this is the problem with American healthcare is I was fucked over. My mom is dead because the healthcare sucked. My mom was the fucking manager, um, the president of the resident council office. Everyone wanted this job. In the area, everyone wanted the job. Everyone wanted to be president. My mom was the fucking president. My mom was the fucking king of the fucking county. You know what I'm saying? That was her job. My mother was that's what she did. But healthcare fucked over. She's dead now. My 2 dogs. God damn it. My 2 dogs are dead, right? Because the fucking American healthcare system fucking sucks. Again, I had a brain tumor. I have a stroke. I went through this bullshit. They don't believe me. I'm living off of fucking. I'm in so much debt right now because of this shit. It's stupid. Anyways, continue.
Is to start with 2 waves that are in phase.
And the point of all that was just to point out that the education in my part of the town was shit. And you see why. Instead of putting me into an honors class where I belonged, they were like, he's a bad student, let's go ahead and expel him. And they sent me to the road, and they set me up to be the master criminal. But I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't a bad boy. I was a good kid. But they gave me everything that if I was I tell people that I tell people this all the time. You're lucky I never picked up a gun. You're lucky I was never a bad dude. There's so many girls that could have gotten taken advantage of and raped and abused, and I could have gotten so much pussy. I could have been so fucking evil. You know what I'm saying? But I was a good kid, and the fucking system fucking sucked. And this is why the world sucks, is because they punish good kids. And they let fucking bad people, Trump's fine, whatever it is. Anyways.
And make sure one wave gets moved forward compared to the other. But how far forward should we move these in order to get constructive and destructive? Well, let's just test it out. We start here. When they're right next to each other, we get constructive. And if I move this second wave source that was initially in phase all the way to here, I get constructive again. How far did I move it? I moved it this far. The front of that speaker moved this far. So how far was that? Let me get rid of this. That was 1 wavelength. So look at this picture. From peak to peak is exactly 1 wavelength. And we're assuming these waves have the same wavelength. So notice that essentially what we did, we made it so that the wave from wave source 2 doesn't have to travel as far to whatever's detecting the sound. Maybe there's an ear here or some sort of scientific detector detecting the sound. Wave source 2 is now only traveling this far to get to the detector, whereas wave source 1 is traveling this far. In other words, we made it so that wave source 1 has to travel 1 wavelength further than wave source 2 does, and that makes it so that they're in phase and you get constructive interference again. But that's not the only option. We can keep moving wave source.
But what's the point? Why do that?
Source 2 forward. If we move it all the way to here, we've moved it another wavelength forward. We again get constructive interference. And at this point, wave source 1 is having to make its wave travel 2 wavelengths further than wave source 2 does. And you can probably see the pattern. No matter how many wavelengths we move it forward, as long as it's an integer number of wavelengths, we again get constructive interference. So something that turns out to be useful.
Congratulations, you're now a first grader.
Is a formula that tells us, all right, how much path length difference should there be? So if I'm going to call this x2, the distance that the wave from wave source 2 has to travel to get to whatever's detecting that wave, and the distance x1 that wave source 1 has to travel to get to that detector. So we could write down a formula that relates the difference in path length, I'll call that delta x, which is going to be the distance that wave 1 has to travel minus the distance that wave 2 has to travel.
So it's called delta because it's distance? You're not explaining enough.
And given what we saw up here,
and this is still better than YouTube by far.
If this path length difference,
people on YouTube is not an education system, but the people try it to be, and they suck at their job. This goes out to you people like Action Lab, to VT, fucking physics and shit. Like, you guys suck as educators. You are sad. So anyways.
is ever equal to an integer number of wavelengths. So if it was 0, that was when they were right next to each other, you got constructive. When this difference is equal to 1 wavelength, we also got constructive. When it was 2 wavelengths, we got constructive. It turns out any integer wavelength gives us constructive. So how would we get destructive interference then? Well, let's continue with this wave source that originally started in phase, right? So these two wave sources are starting in phase. How far do I have to move it to get destructive? Let's just see, I have to move it till it's right about here. So how far did the front of that speaker move? It moved about this far, which if I get rid of that speaker, you can see is about half of a wavelength. From peak to valley is one.
Again, it's like he's talking to like a 2-year-old. Like, congratulations, you figured out that half a circle makes half a circle.
1/2 of a wavelength. But that's not the only option. I can keep
Or should I say, half a pi equals half a pi.
moving it forward. Let's just see, that's constructive. My next destructive happens here, which was an extra this far. How far was that?
One?
Let's just see. That's 1 wavelength.
Whoa.
So notice at this point, wave source 1 is having to go 1.5 wavelengths further than wave source 2 does. So let's just keep going. Move wave source 2. That's constructive. We get another destructive here, which is an extra this far forward, and that's equal to 1 more wavelength. So if we get rid of this, you can see valley to valley is a whole nother wavelength. So in this case, wave source 2 has to travel 2.5 wavelengths farther than wave source 2. Anytime wave source 1 has to travel a half integer more wavelengths than wave source 2, you get destructive interference. In other words, if this path length difference here is equal to lambda over 2, 3 lambda over 2, which is 1.5 wavelengths, 5 lambda over 2, which is 2.5 wavelengths, and so on, that leads to destructive interference. So this is how the path length differences between two wave sources can determine whether you're going to get constructive.
For the record, I'm with you, except for that lambda shit. I don't know what the fuck you just said. I don't care to learn it. But it doesn't impact me. It doesn't change anything. You're complicating it for no fucking reason. I'm not going to learn your language. You're not going into the books. Oh, this guy made me learn these fucking stupid languages for no fucking reason. Because there's no goal. There's no point. You're just complicating shit. Calling a circle a pie for no fucking reason. Congratulations, you fucking idiot.
Or destructive interference. But notice, we started with two wave sources that were in phase. These started in phase. So this whole analysis down here assumes that the two sources started in phase with each other, i.e. neither of them are pi shifted. What would this analysis give you if we started with one that was pi shifted? So let's get rid of this wave 2. Let's put this wave 2 back in here.
If it was reversed, not pi shifted, if it was reversed.
Here, remember this one? This one was pi shifted
Reversed.
relative to wave source 1. So if we put this one in here, and we'll get rid of this. Now when these two wave sources are right next to each other, you're getting destructive interference. So this time for a path length difference of 0, right? These are both traveling the same distance to get to the detector. So x1 and x2 are going to be equal. You subtract them, you'd get 0. This time the 0 is giving us destructive instead of constructive.
This is exactly why I failed in school, because this is stupid. Like, what's the point of learning this? What's the goal of learning it? I don't see where you're getting to. What am I learning here? Why am I learning this? What's the point? You haven't made clarification at all. All you're doing, what Neil deGrasse Tyson did, and making a nest for no eggs, as of yet. I don't know that there's a nest or a female bird that's going to lay eggs, because there isn't one as of yet. Point it out, say, oh, we're building a nest for her eggs. Okay, cool, that makes sense, let's do it. But as is, it's just, oh, we're making a nest. Why are we making a nest? Oh, just to make it. Fuck that, I'd rather go and fucking jack off somewhere. What the fuck are you doing?
So let's see what happens. If we move this forward, let's see how far we've got to move this forward to again get destructive. We'd have to move it over to here. How far did we move it? Let's just check. We moved the front of the speaker that far, which is 1 whole wavelength. So if we get rid of this, we had to move the front of the speaker 1 whole wavelength. And look, again, it's destructive. So again, 0 gave us destructive this time, and lambda's giving us destructive, and you realize, oh wait, all of these integer wavelengths, if I move it another integer wavelength forward, I'm again going to get destructive interference because all these peaks are lining up with valleys. So interestingly, if two sources started pi out of phase, so I'm going to change this, started pi out of phase, then path length differences of 0, lambda, and 2 lambda aren't going to give us constructive, they're going to give us destructive. And so you could probably guess now, what are these path length differences of half integer wavelengths going to give us? Well, let's just find out. Let's start here, and we'll get rid of these. Let's just check. We'll move this forward 1/2 of a wavelength, and what do I get? Yep, I get constructive. So if I move this pi shifted source half a wavelength forward, instead of giving me destructive, it's giving me constructive now. And if I move it so it goes another wavelength forward over to here, notice this time wave source 1 has to move 1.5 wavelengths further than wave source 2. That's 3/2 wavelengths. But instead of giving us destructive, look, these are lining up perfectly. It's giving us constructive. And you realize, oh, all these half integer wavelength path length differences, instead of giving me destructive, are giving me constructive now because one of these wave sources was pi shifted compared to the other. So I can take this here and I can say that when the two sources start pi out of phase, instead of leading to destructive, this is going to lead to constructive interference. And these two ideas are the foundation of almost all interference patterns you find in the universe, which is kind of cool. If there's an interference pattern you see out there, it's probably due to this. And if there's an equation you end up using, it's probably fundamentally based on this idea if it's got wave interference in it. So I should say one more thing. The sources don't actually have to start out of phase. Sometimes they travel around, things happen. It's a crazy universe. Maybe one of the waves gets shifted along its travel. Regardless,
that's why all of your things don't fucking matter, because out in the world, shit's weird. Yes, in a structured environment, yes, now your stuff matters. But outside in the real world, no, it doesn't. And that's the problem. You math nerds are so sheltered that you complicated shit in a sheltered environment, and now you're trying to compare it to real life shit. It doesn't fucking work, you dumb bitch. Animals will never pay attention to that. You know why? Because it doesn't fucking matter.
if any of them get a pi shift, either at the beginning or later
Not pi shift, reversed.
on, you would use this second condition over here to figure out whether you get constructive or destructive. If neither of them get a
Or you use this little thing called common sense, which you are killing, you fucking idiot.
phase shift, or interestingly, if both of them get a phase shift, you could use this one because you could imagine flipping both of them over, and it's the same as not flipping any of them over. So recapping, constructive interference happens when two waves are lined up perfectly. Destructive interference happens when the peaks match the valleys and they cancel perfectly. And you could use the path length difference for two wave sources to determine whether those waves are going to interfere constructively or destructively. The path length difference,
or you use your brain. Simple.
Is the difference between how far one wave.
Once upon a time, we were, all in on teaching that. Nowadays, it seems we would rather you know about the weeds instead of the context. The contents, rather.
Wave has to travel to get to a detector compared to how far another wave has to travel to get to that same detector. Assuming those two sources started in phase and neither of them got a pi shift along.
And he never says why. They're traveling to that ear for what reason? Oh, just to do it. Oh, okay, then none of this matters. And you're explaining it just to explain it, just to make noise. Because you have no point.
On their travels, path length differences of integer wavelengths are going to give you constructive interference.
I hope you enjoy your nest, because there's no eggs.
And path length differences of half integer wavelengths are going to give you destructive interference. Whereas if the two sources started pi out of phase, or one of them got a pi phase shift along its travel, integer.
Stop saying pi phase shift. It's reversed. If the circle is reversed, either it's a circle or it's a reversed circle. Stop calling it pi. There's no reason to say delta. There's no reason for any of this fucking overly complicated bullshit. You're just making a bunch of noise for no fucking reason. You spoiled fucking idiot.
Your wavelengths for the path length difference are going to give you
And what's sad is, as bad as this person is, he's still way fucking better than the Action Lab and vt.physics or whatever. Fucking idiots. vt
destructive
physics.
interference, and half integer wavelengths for the path length difference are going to give you constructive interference.
This is so fucking dumb. I'm sorry. I apologize. And the reason why I apologize is because I honestly thought I really thought there was a goal. I really thought I was gonna learn something. I really thought I was going somewhere. I was like, this is well done, good job. But if I just kept going, I would have found out. I would have realized, oh, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Basically, he's just playing in the weeds and keep making a lot of noise and scratching a butthole. But there's it's so stupid. Anyways, that's still better than the new Action Lab. Anyways, that's it. Be well, be happy, be safe. I'm married. Godspeed, God bless. Be strong and take care. Don't let the door hit you where the Lord split you. And have a great day, my motherfuckers.